Today on Face the Nation from Colorado Springs, Colorado, an exclusive interview with Republican presidential candidate John McCain. Senator McCain says he wants to remake Washington and that change is coming. But how does he beat Barack Obama? And how does Vice Presidential nominee Sarah Palin help? We'll ask him. Then I'll have a final word on a new theme song for St. Paul, Minnesota. But first, Senator John McCain on Face the Nation.
Face the Nation with CBS News Chief Washington Correspondent Bob Schieffer. From Colorado Springs, Colorado, Bob Schieffer.
And good morning again. We welcome John McCain to his 65th appearance on Face the Nation. Senator McCain, you have now appeared on Face the Nation more than any other person. Over the last year, you passed the previous record holder, who was Bob Dole.
Well, it's an honor to follow in the footsteps of a great American, and that does say also a comment about the number of years that you have been doing this program in obviously an outstanding fashion.
Well, we're glad to have you. Let's start right in with what you were talking about the other night. You did something really extraordinary at that convention. I've never been at a political convention where I heard a candidate get up and not only go after the other party, but go after your own party. You even said at one point your party had lost its way. You said that Washington has to change and you're the one that can change it. But that's going to be a tall order, isn't it? I mean, because normally it's out in the wilderness. It's the group that's out that says, throw the bums out. You're saying it was your party that was part of the problem and that you can be the agent of change. How do you convince people of that?
Well, Bob, I think we have to show them my record. I think we have to show them that I took on the big spenders, that I did campaign finance reform. I reached across the aisle to Democrats. And obviously, I was very unpopular in some parts of my own party, whether it be on the issue of climate change or against Rumsfeld's strategy and the president's strategy in Iraq, or whether it be on campaign finance reform or a number of other issues that I have fought against the, quote, special interests. And the point is real. We now have former members of Congress residing in federal prison. So it was corruption. And I guess I'll say again what I said. We came to Washington to change Washington. We came to power to change Washington, and Washington changed us. And I understand the challenge, but I have to make a strong case that we're going to bring about that change, and it's the right kind of change. And I know we're going to be talking about my running mate, but I think I got the right kind of running mate who has that record also.
We'll get to that in just a minute, but let me ask you just some specifics on how you're going to do it. Are you going to try to form some sort of unity government? Are you going to try to have Democrats within your administration as well as Republicans?
You have to. You have to. Look at the approval rating of both Republicans and Democrats now. Look at the loss of trust and confidence. When we do all the town hall meetings and people say, I've lost all trust and confidence in government, they don't say, I've lost confidence in Republicans, Democrats. I've lost confidence in everybody. And the way you restore it is obviously to have a very bipartisan approach. Well, they're in gridlock now. We all know that. They're going to go into session tomorrow, actually, and they're going to be gridlocked for a month, and then they're going to go out, whether it be energy or whether it be passing the necessary appropriations bills, whatever it is, and then the American people will, frankly, who are hurting more, we're going to be more disillusioned if that's possible.
So you're going to have Democrats in the White House. Will you have Democrats in your cabinet?
Yeah, of course.
How many?
Well, I don't know how many, but I can tell you, in all due respect to previous administrations, it's not going to be a single, well, we have a Democrat now. It's going to be the best people in America, the smartest people in America. So many of these problems we face, for example, energy independence. What's partisan about that? In other words, we've got to have people who are the best and the brightest. And I'll tell you, some of them, I'll ask them to work for $1 a year. They've made enough money. But I'll also ask people who have struggled out there in the trenches to help people, to to volunteer in their communities, who understand these problems at that level, which obviously is lost on a big segment of Washington.
Let's talk about Governor Palin.
Good.
There's no question she lit up that convention. I would guess that you now have a lot of Republicans, social conservatives, evangelicals, who might not have liked you too much before you did that, and you might have turned that around. But there's also a number of people, some of your supporters, who are a little bit worried about it. Charles Krauthammer, the very conservative columnist, said the other day that the only constitutional job of the vice president is to be ready to become president at a moment's notice. And he said flatly, she is not ready. How do you answer him?
Well, let me say first that in all due respect to any commentator, this is the most popular governor in America. She has a clear record of doing what Americans want first and uppermost: reform, reform. She's not only talked about it, but she's done it, and she took on the people in her own party. She took on a sitting governor of her own party, and she reformed, and they passed ethics and lobbying reform, and she gave money back to the taxpayers, and they cut spending. They did the things the Americans wanted. She did the things that Americans want most. So in all due respect to any of the critics, what we want is the change in Washington. Who better in the political landscape could do that than Governor Sarah Palin, whose whole life has been engaged in that, taking them on and winning. I've taken them on and won less than she has.
Well, let me just quote him again.
Sure.
These are his words, not mine.
Oh, I
he
understand.
says, Barack Obama is the least qualified presidential candidate in living memory. But he says, when you pick Palin, the case against Obama, that case evaporates.
Well, again, again, in respect to many of the critics, and I understand that criticism, it's part of the business. But I also would like to say that she's not only excited our base that you pointed out about, she's excited Americans all over this country. We've been campaigning together. The electricity has been incredible. And I'd like to say it's all because of a charisma injection on the part of John McCain, but it's not. They're excited about this reformer, this lifetime member of the NRA, the person, she was a point guard. She has, I mean, and I'm sure that Governor Palin has failings, and I'm sure she's made mistakes because she's had a long career from city council to mayor to governor. But the fact is, she's kind of what Americans have been looking for. And again, in all due respect to any critic, I think being mayor is a very important job nowadays, especially the way America's hurting. There's people who are mayors right now who are saying, hey, there's an abandoned house over on this street. The people have left it. What are we going to do? You know, how are we going to provide people with the goods and services they need with declining budgets? So all I can say is I think that her experience and her background not only qualifies her, but brings to Washington a kind of an energy and a fresh wind that maybe is necessary in our nation's capital.
When will you let her out to campaign on her own? When will she start having news conferences? When will she start doing interviews?
Well, as you know, we just finished the convention, but within the next few days, and I'm strongly recommending that she come on Face the Nation with Bob Schieffer, and that will be the first of her 65 appearances.
All right. Well, we'll make a place for her here.
Thank you.
And thank you for saying that. Let's talk a little bit about the big news of the day. Both the Post and the New York Times report that the administration is preparing to put Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two guarantors of mortgages, in some sort of a conservatorship. Basically what they're going to do is dismiss the officers. The government will take over. There's no way you can say this is not going to cost the taxpayers billions of dollars. Do you think this is a good idea, Senator McCain?
I think it has to be done, Bob. I think that we've got to keep people in their homes. There's got to be restructuring, there's got to be reorganization, and there's got to be some confidence that we've stopped this downward spiral. It's hard, it's tough, but it's also the classic example of why we need change in Washington. It's an example of cronyism, special interest, lobbyists, a quasi-governmental organization where the executives were making $100 and some million a year while things were going downhill, going to hell in a handbasket. This is the kind of cronyism and corruption that has made people so justifiably angered. I did have a long conversation with Secretary Paulson, a man I admire and respect, and he did say that when the housing market starts back up, and it will in America, then the taxpayers are going to be the first to be paid off. They're the ones that are going to be reimbursed when the values of the homes hit bottom and start back up, and they start getting more money back in. And that has to be a vital part of it. And again, this is a system that cries out for reform.
You're talking about they're going to have some more regulation. Is that what you're saying?
More regulation, more oversight, more transparency, more of everything, and frankly, a dramatic reduction in what they do. You know, they were originally designed to provide a chance for middle-income people to have an affordable home loan mortgage. And it grew into this sprawling, massive bureaucracy rife with corruption, cronyism, special interests, lobbyists, and a relationship with Congress. Congress passed these laws that allowed these massive loopholes to be there. And so, obviously, it's got not only to be fixed, but it's a system. It's an example and a symptom of a system where we're so close to the special interests that somehow, in Washington, we're so close that somehow the average American is totally disregarded.
All right, let's take a break here.
Sure.
We'll come back and talk about this and a lot more in 1 minute.